The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
My name is Jasmine, and I am a recovering drug addict.
My name is Richie Farrell, aka the Old White Junkie.
And we are your hosts for Exit Team Nashua.
Our mission is to bring recovery into the living room.
Last year, over 72,000 Americans died of an accidental overdose.
That's almost 200 Americans every single day.
We will bring you guests with real-life experiences with addiction and recovery. Welcome to Exit Team Nashua.
Welcome everybody to Exit Team Nashua. My name's Jessie and I'll be your host this evening. In the studio tonight we have Eric LaBarge. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank
Finally.
you.
Took a little bit.
It did.
I had to use the influence of my friend, to put the pressure on you there.
You definitely cornered me there. I couldn't get out of it any longer.
But I mean, we've met a couple of times, but I don't really know your story. So that's the fun part about having you on here and getting to know you, is opportunity to kind of just learn about you and what you've been through and who you are today. So, why don't we just jump into it? Tell us about how would you introduce yourself today? You own a business, you're a person in recovery.
Correct. If you keep going, I'll just go, yeah.
You are in recovery from what's your drug of choice?
Well, I am I'm a grateful recovering addict. Heroin was my eventually drug of choice. Before that, it was cocaine. And
were you an IV user?
I was in the end, yes.
Yeah. Yep.
I think I became an IV user in my 30s. I think I was a little late in the game, but
yeah, my story is late too.
Yeah.
I didn't touch heroin until I was 29, actually.
Yeah. Honestly, when I grew up, it was the crack epidemic, and heroin wasn't cool.
Yeah.
Opiates weren't cool.
Yeah. I remember, I think I was in high school when oxys came around.
Right.
And that's kind of when they hit, I was graduating high school around then.
Yeah.
And that kind of caught on for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I got into it into my 20s. What was it like for you?
Well, my story is a little bit different. I have a lot of prison in my story. I went to prison fairly young. I went to prison when I was about 19 years old. I was a full-blown, coke addict. Never used an IV. Mostly smoking and snorting and doing whatever. And I got into a fight when I was younger, and I ended up doing 2 to 7. It was the first sentence I got. It was a 3.5 to 7.
And how old were you?
19.
19.
Yeah.
And for fighting.
Yeah.
That's funny. One of my best friends has the same story. Where'd you end up doing your time?
So I did my time. I went to Concord, and then I ended up going to Laconia. At the time, they had a drug program called, what the hell was the name of that? Camera.
Up in Laconia. Was it so in county?
Summer House. It was called Summer House. It was an extensive program. It was originally, I think, a 14-month program. It was basically for offenders that went into the prison, and it was trying to break you of your criminal, habits, whatever you
Rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation.
Yep.
And I found out when I did that program that it didn't really hit me till later on, until I started actually doing work on myself. But when I did that program, I did really well. And it wasn't until later I was able to put it together that if I took away the drugs and alcohol, I actually did really well. And I did that program while I was there. I got a GED, I got a diploma, I got half an associate's degree, and I did a huge amount of programs, a bunch of programs, and just continuously worked on myself. When I got out, even though I had done the program, honestly, this is where AA and NA really came into focus later down the road, because I did everything that you could do in recovery, but I didn't join a fellowship.
You didn't have a program.
No.
Right.
No. I was educated. I knew how drug addiction worked and the family dynamics to it, but I had no idea about the actual addiction itself and the effects that it really had.
It's crazy that the solution's right there the whole time,
Yeah.
So how much recovery did you have?
I mean, geez, technically I had 2.5 years, but
then you got out and you weren't working a program.
I think I made it a couple days.
Days, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then some friends came and picked me up, and I went to a bar.
You have like no defense.
No, I went in when I was 19, so I turned 21 in prison.
Yeah.
So when I had gotten out,
you didn't have a chance.
No. It didn't take long before.
Yeah, so what did that look like?
That looked like me drinking at $1, you call it, getting drunk, doing cocaine. And eventually, fairly soon after that, smoking cocaine. And then just struggling from there out, like holding it together. I did a good amount of schooling in there, so I was on the borderline of getting a really good job as like an electrician. A company that I worked for as a laborer really liked me and found out that I had a pretty good math background, so they wanted to hire me. And I was in a bar, and I had one beer, and I came out, and I seen a parole officer, and I went back for I think 9 months, and then I had to wait to get re-paroled out after the 9 months. There's definitely a different understanding in the parole department and in the community of drug addiction.
That's insane.
It didn't exist 20 years ago. It didn't exist.
That's crazy.
If you drank a beer, you went back.
You're a criminal.
Yeah.
Criminal.
You went back, yeah.
That's insanity.
Yeah.
And that stuff's still happening today.
Sure.
Sure. So you went back for 9 months, and then tell us more.
So I went back for 9 months. I always say this, and some people don't disagree with the terminology, but being the good addict that I was, I could take a good beating. So, I went back, picked myself back up. I said, "You're going to do better this time." They did a reoffender program. That was another, like I said, 9 months. I did that. Waited to get back out, got back out, went to a bar, got in a bar fight, got a 1.5 to 5 that pretty much turned into 5. And, I got to be honest with you, it just never stopped until 2011, from 97. And it was just bid prison sentence overlapping prison sentence.
You need to be working on prison reform systems or something, because your
I
whole
work
life
with it.
has been stolen.
Yeah. It's gone. Can't get it back.
Right.
So I try to advocate for guys coming out of prison, because in the end, honestly, it's all I knew.
Yeah.
I couldn't function in society.
Yeah.
And I talk about it frequently.
That's why
as
you
part of
work
my story.
with the population that you do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I feel like they don't have a big enough voice, because when somebody commits a crime, they're considered as less than in society.
Yeah.
And when they're getting out, people don't, it's hard to say, but I can't relate to a combat veteran coming home. But I can relate on the level of the post-traumatic stress side that you go through, of actually having to relearn how to be a member in society.
I totally get it.
Because I was in the union for 10 years, and I came across some guys that were addicts, and they were vets.
Yeah.
And we clicked real well.
Yeah.
Because we could understand from an addict's,
that survival
outlook.
mode.
Yeah.
When you've just had to survive.
That's right.
It definitely changes a person. I definitely feel that I have lots of trauma, just different you know, places I've been arrested. Like I was talking about, I don't know, I was on the show last time, but even when my phone rings, like because I got called by probation, come down here, and then hauled
That's a
away.
traumatizing experience in itself.
When
Showing up on Wednesdays.
When a car pulls in the driveway, I get nervous still. Like, I mean, I'm 2.5 years sober. Like, you know, I can't even have my phone ring without feeling sick in my stomach. So that's definitely a stress response. Yeah, so tell us about, you know, like you said, you kept going back and forth. Like, you know, what was the worst of it?
That's a really good question. So eventually I stopped going back to Laconia, which is where it was. And I started just staying in Concord. And the longer I stayed in, the more of a convict I became.
Yeah.
The more institutionalized I became. It became home.
Yeah.
And it still feels a little weird saying that, but it's my truth.
Yeah.
Like, when I went, it was almost a comfortable feeling in the back of the cruiser in handcuffs, knowing that I was going back home.
Because it's the only time that you probably ever felt safe and secure.
Mm.
Tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up for you.
Well, I come from a long line of alcoholics and addicts.
Where were you raised?
So I was born in upstate New York, Plattsburgh. My family moved down here to Nashua in the 80s for work. I had already had some relatives that lived out here, so we stayed with them. I came out here when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I grew up on Ash Street in Nashua, New Hampshire, which was during the crack epidemic, and it was pretty wild at the time.
Yeah.
I always make the joke, everybody knew karate back then. Just people walk around with nunchucks and karate shoes on, and it was a crazy time. But there was a lot of violence. There was a lot of violence in my neighborhood.
So did you grow up around like drug use in your home, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my parents like drank. They came from a long line of alcoholic and drug addicts, like I said. But they were the ones that kind of worked for the most part. And
and there's probably love, but dysfunction, you know?
Yeah. Dysfunction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So you were kind of like predispositioned, environmentally programmed to have those responses.
Sure. Physical, mental abuse.
Yeah.
When I was in my early teens, eventually I just kept running away. I just ran away all the time. And I would stay at friends' houses. I would sleep on their couches. I eventually started going to committing crimes like stealing cars and so forth, and going to YDC and reform school. So I don't know, from 14, 15 years old on until I was 18, I was in another YDC. So yeah, a good amount of time I've spent.
Yeah, definitely like institutionalized, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
So when was the last time you were there?
Where?
That you were institutionalized.
Oh, so I got out in 2011, and I was a mess, and I was doing a lot of drugs. I was hanging around with a lot different caliber of people, kind of keep it PG, but you know, I was doing some organized crime stuff, and I don't know what happened. Like, eventually I went into my parole officer, and great guy. He was the sworn enemy, but he was a great guy, and he gave me a break. And I went in. I'll never forget it. I took a UA, which is a drug test, a urine, and I came back dirty for almost every drug. And he made a joke that I missed a few, and I was just like, take me back.
Yeah.
And he looked at me a little weird. And, you know, throughout the years of being in and out of prison, you watch people's careers. So, like, I would watch a guy go in as a rookie cop and end up being like a sergeant or a lieutenant. So you gain
Build
a rapport.
relationships
Yeah,
with
yeah,
these
yeah.
people.
And
And they see you as a human being.
they do. Yeah.
Right.
So
Right. To a degree.
to a degree. So I'm in the office. He comes back, and I tell him, just send me back. And he took like a couple minute pause. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going back. This is what it is. And he told me, this ain't a hotel. I'm not sending you back. And I wasn't like shocked, but like I was kind of taken back a little bit. And you have to understand, like, that was always my plan B. No matter what, if I got too messed up on drugs, I could always go back and clean up, and that was my rehab.
Yeah, I get
And,
it. Yeah.
And I left there like really dumbfounded and scared. Through doing a lot of work on myself, I realized that, I was this big tough guy in prison, but really I was just a scared little boy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was a 9-year-old little boy that got mentally and physically abused.
Mm-hmm.
And I carried that trauma and that fear around, but eventually I got to a point where I just told myself, nobody's ever going to put their hands on me again. Nobody's ever going to abuse me. And I carried that. I carried that for many years. I wasn't a good person. I can tell you that. Deep down inside, I had core values.
Yeah. You didn't behave like a good person.
No. I had mannerisms.
It was always still in there, though.
But I could commit, violence very easily in the end.
Yep.
And today, that's not really something I'm proud of. I clarify that when I'm speaking, because some people take that wrong, and it's nothing.
Well, it's
Now
not
that
who
I've
you
done
are
work,
today.
no, it's not at all.
Okay. Then
yeah.
I don't think that.
Yeah. So I left there, and I had to figure something out. And a couple turn of events happened.
So were you at like your rock bottom? Was it like,
No,
I'm
that
done with
wasn't
the
even my
drugs,
rock bottom.
so take me, and like you wanted help?
Not even close.
No, so you were like a little
just all I know.
dumbfounded, but you were just like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna figure this
Jerk
out.
reaction, send me back.
Okay.
So I left there, scratching my head, not knowing what to do. And at that point, just like when I got sent back, like I had to pick myself up and go, okay, well, what are we gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
And I gave life a try. And meanwhile, at this point, I had a heroin habit. I was on and off heroin and Suboxones a lot, and I went back and forth. And
I remember
eventually,
that's the worst.
yeah.
It's not fun.
And I was known for doing favors. I did favors for people with violence, and I did things that most people wouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that, and I ended up getting a job in the union.
Mm-hmm.
And I did okay with that. The problem
You got a
was,
job in the union. Did you have to pass a drug test?
yes, but there was ways around it.
Oh, okay.
So I got the job in the union, and I was doing good for a while. And I think every addict has like this time where they actually were able to hold it together for a minute.
Yeah.
And
I remember.
that was my minute.
Yeah.
That was my minute. Like I was able to like go to work every day and make my lunch and
How
play
long
this
did it
Family
last?
Guy. Jeez, I don't know, a few months.
Yeah.
Like 6 months, 9 months.
That's a pretty good run.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, in between though, like still the ups and downs of my addiction, because with the union came the layoffs.
Yeah.
So eventually my value that I had in myself was tied to my job.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how I found value in myself.
Yeah, I struggle with that.
And when that was gone, I had no more value.
Mm-hmm.
I was barely making enough money on unemployment in New Hampshire, and I my addiction took off, and I got really bad in between those times. Eventually, what had happened is, in between those times, I ended up committing a crime, and I made a good amount of money on it, and it was probably one of the worst things that could happen to me, and the best things. The worst is that, I was in this psychosis for days on end, and I was just living in a nightmare. And I say it all the time, I had this hole inside me this big, and I took all these drugs, and they stopped working. I couldn't feel it anymore, and the drugs were like endless, and they weren't
That's
working.
the worst.
And at that point, like, I literally was bankrupt. I was emotionally, physically, spiritually bankrupt. I had nothing left, and it was just pain. And I had worked with a kid in the union that got clean, and there's a Guns N' Roses song, Mr. Brownstone, and this kid was just like the worst kind of addict. Like, he just was really, really bad heroin addict. And, you know, of course, I'm on the side of him doing it also, but
Right.
he went to places like
He was like way worse.
He was way worse.
Made you almost feel like okay about yourself.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And he got clean.
Oh, okay.
And I remember reaching out to him, and I was like really close to committing suicide. I was just at my end.
Yeah.
Because I just wasn't going back to jail anymore. So,
right.
And I was able to like piece together this semi function in life.
Right.
I became functionable, and I called him and I said, I need help. Like, I can't do this no more, or I'm going to kill myself. And he came over, and we called the benefits number and the hotline, and I got into a place in Hampton, and or Hampstead Hospital.
Oh, okay. I've been there
I went to the detox. Yeah. And you know, I went in, I OD'd in the doorway.
Yeah.
And it was a really bad detox, I'll say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was up for a month walking the hallways in treatment like a ghost, and I ended up going to Gosnell, and great program.
I've heard really good things.
I knew, and I was very fortunate like this, but I knew that if I went someplace local and I was related as Eric LaBarge, the prison Eric LaBarge, I wasn't going to make it.
Right.
I wasn't going to make it. I had to get away from people and just like really get honest and be me and be in pain.
Not worry at all about like what anyone hears or thinks or says. Yeah, because that's probably challenging. Right.
And I had this amazing experience. It was like really beautiful. Like my spirit came back, and I was able to cry for a couple days, and like, and I was me again for a minute. And the thing was, like, the girl I was with at the time smoked and drank, and I got in the car when she picked me up, and we were up by Martha's Vineyard, and she was smoking weed. I said, no, you can't do that. And
it's always the girl, though.
I'm like, you don't understand. Like, I do coke and I do heroin. I don't do that.
Right.
And I played a good game, and she said, okay, that makes sense. And I smoked weed, and I drank wine at Martha's Vineyard with my pinky up, and that led...
And you behaved yourself?
Yeah, that led real soon to me going back to the union and like going to... I thought it was Ben Affleck in the town. I could rob drug dealers, and I thought I could rob drug dealers and go to AA meetings, and that didn't work.
Right,
that led to a number of relapses.
So you're like living the double, 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah. And from there out, it was just, they just kept going down further and further. Eventually, I OD'd on the side of the road, and that parole officer drove by and see me and said, what's going on? And I just said, I relapsed, I OD'd. And he goes, well, what's going on? And I said, I'm not letting the cops search my car. But, you know, I told him what I had in it. He gave me a break again. I got charged. But I said, I got to go back to rehab. And it was just funny because just once again, the lack of education that the parole department had with addiction.
Right.
Like, here I am shooting heroin on the side of the road.
Right.
And ODing and telling him I have to go back to rehab. And his response to that was, wow, you're doing so good. I'm like, you don't understand. Like, if I'm ODing on the side of the road, it's time for me to go back.
Right. And I'm not doing good.
Yeah. And of course, I'm leaving out a portion of the story because we don't really have a lot of time. But I went back this time, and something else happened. Like, I had like another spiritual awakening. Like, I had left God, and it's funny because every time I prayed to God, I went back to jail fairly shortly after. Today, that's divine intervention. Before, it was a punishment. And when I prayed to God this time, He answered. Like it was like this moment, like in a movie. Like literally, I walked out in the backyard, the stars were out. I looked and I said, I don't know what to do. Help me. And the next day, my sponsor they sent me to back to the rehab from the detox, and they said your sponsor just paid for a month for you to go to a sober living program. And I said, okay. And I went.
Where'd you go?
I went to Bonfire, and I made it for about a week, 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I got kicked out, not for using, but for a misunderstanding, we'll say. And I remember going home, driving home from Dover to Manchester, and just wanting to drink, and I'll start fresh in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And the Serenity Prayer popped in my head. God grant me the serenity to do the thing.
Accept the things I cannot
Accept
change.
the things that I cannot change.
The courage to change the things I can. The
wisdom,
wisdom
no
to know
difference. And I said that for an hour straight, and it blocked me from doing that move and taking a shot at Jameson on the way home. And when I got home, I was just so emotionally exhausted. I just slept. And the next morning I prayed, and I just picked a meeting. And when I went to that meeting, there was a guy there, and I just raised my hand and I said, look, I'm just doing what I'm told to do. All I know is I don't want to go back to using. And I raised my hand and I said what was going on. And this guy said, hey, after the meeting, I got a place I think you can go. That was Rise Above in Nashua. And what an amazing experience. See, I didn't need structure. I had structure. I could wake up early. I could do what I was supposed to do. I had done halfway houses.
You need a community and connection.
And spirituality.
Yeah.
And their program was like legit based on some spirituality that I needed, because that's what I lacked. And it was an amazing program. Today, one of the owners, Justin Etlin, is my sponsor still today. I just celebrated 5 years. That was 5 years ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And now I have my own program.
You help a lot of people.
I try. Yeah.
So you're definitely passing on the message.
I am.
Doing God's work.
Yeah. I live it.
Yeah.
So I'm not really a good bullshitter.
It's okay.
I'm not really a good, bluffer, and
right.
But one thing I do know is that if you live your truth, then you can never go wrong. Mm-hmm. And basically, I live my truth. I tell the guys all the time, I'm not going to come down from Mount Sinai with the tablet and give you some profound information.
Right. I'm just doing the best I can.
I'm going to tell you the basics on how to stay clean.
Right.
Get a job, go to meetings, get a sponsor, become part of.
You want what I have, do what I do.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. And we have a pretty fairly good success rate. Mm-hmm. We offer a lot of services, more than.
And your house is called, did you want to tell everyone your house is called?
Yeah, we're called Starting Point Sober Living, out of Manchester, New Hampshire.
And you have men and women's houses?
We do. The women's house is called Adira Sober Living.
Yep.
And it's an amazing program.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming to share your story tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Awesome. It was good to get to know you.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone for tuning in tonight, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.